Off a rendezvous in Boston, Massachusetts. We are back in the friendly confines of New York City. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Evan and Tiki. The New York Knicks had a chance to close out the Boston Celtics last night, and there are a lot of aspects of last night's game we will get into, including the perspective that we had being in the arena. But here's my first thought, Tiki, and you tell me if you agree with me from your seat at home. The killer instinct that you need to finish off a team, which the Pacers had a night earlier, did not exist last night in Boston.
No.
Because to me, if you want to find a moment, a section, a time in the game where it was there, and I know many may consider it trolling when I did a little video with Tommy saying, the Knicks are up by 8, this thing is over. I honestly thought, and I will raise my hand and take L's, that this was their moment to crush the soul of the Boston Celtics early second quarter. They actually built up the lead to 9. The arena was starting to get nervous. It was starting to get quiet. And the New York Knicks, and this is not the first time, T, because this happened against Detroit. They lacked the killer instinct to not just play with their food, but swallow their food and then go to the bathroom. And that, to me, and there's many other things to get to, we will, but that's the number one thing that jumped out at me.
Wow, such a unique and interesting analogy you used there, Evan.
Thank you.
But you're right. I mean, we talked about getting off to a quick start, which they did. I said they scored 30 points in the first quarter. They scored 32 points in the first quarter. That urgency, which had been lacking for the first 4 games of the series, even despite being up 3-1, you hadn't seen, but you saw it last night. And in my mind, it was if they just play 90% of that for the rest of the game, they're going to win. And then halftime happens, and I don't know if they took some, sleeping pills or Quaaludes or whatever the heck they got into at halftime. They came out flat, and it was poorly coached. It was poorly executed. And as much as I love the game offensively from Josh Hart, even though I could have loved it more if he would have been more decisive in some of his shots, defensively, he turned into a sieve. All of them did. And so, look, I don't know if the whole rope-a-dope strategy that someone called last week and was talking about, this is what they're doing. They're just playing possum for a lot of this game. And then they have the energy to finish. Maybe they flipped it, and it didn't work for them because they didn't have the energy. They looked sluggish. And it's just Kornet. I mean, how many blocks did he have?
Luke Kornet.
7?
Luke Kornet, the former New York Knick, once a Knick, always a Knick, not only had 7 blocks in the game, which is an absurd number, but that's not the one that jumps out at me. The third quarter of this game was one of the most unique quarters you'll ever see. And when I say unique, I don't say it in a good way. Not only does Jalen Brunson get called for 5 personal fouls, Luke Kornet had 5 of his 7 blocks in the third quarter. So the Celtics had – look, I know we don't want to spend much time doing this, so let's just get it out of the way. Give a lot of credit to the Boston Celtics.
No, you have to.
They showed the heart of a champion. They truly did, and they are a champion. And despite being without their best player, they responded. And it was all the way around, specifically Derrick White, who played outstanding, Luke Kornet with the 5 third-quarter blocks. And not only did they overcome the Jason Tatum injury, they overcame the fact that Kristaps Porzingis doesn't even exist.
I know.
But
what do you have, a point?
Yeah, I mean, at one point.
Yeah, at one point.
And finally, Joe Mazzulla made the adjustment. I can't have this guy on the floor.
Yeah.
But this game, and I want to make this clear, the Knicks still have 2 cracks at this. And one thing we've learned in this best-of-7 series throughout this series is every game's a different story. So what concerns you about Game 5 may not necessarily pop its head up in Game 6 and 7, and we've got time to get to that. But last night was just a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Up by 9 in the second quarter, you have a chance to finish them off.
Yeah.
You have a chance to bury them.
I know that the idea right now is that the Knicks fan and the Knicks should be panicking, but I don't think that's the case. This was just you chalk this one up to a poorly executed, maybe even poorly planned, and I'm going to get to Tibbs and some of his decisions later, but poorly planned attempt to close out a series against the defending champs on the road. Right? That's hard to do. You mentioned it before. The Boston Celtics are a prideful team. And yes, I know Jason Tatum is not here. He's not available. But you said it yesterday. There's good players on this team. Peyton Pritchard, is a good three-point shooter. He shot 14 of them or whatever it was. Jaylen Brown had a really decent day, and then you just mentioned it earlier on. I mean, it's when you look at what Derrick White, the void he filled. I mean, you told me last year he was the guy, and nobody believed you. He could be a guy.
He's the difference.
He's the difference.
No, seriously, when you look at the Celtics, how they went from perennially good basketball team, championship contender, to champion was not just the acquisition of Derrick White, but the evolution of Derrick White into becoming a star on both ends of the floor.
And he's not household named yet.
No, but he made a monstrous difference. By the way, one cool thing about being in another arena is you learn a lot of their lingo. So you referred to Peyton Pritchard. They like to say, "Pritch, please." That's their slogan out there. "Pritch, please."
How do they use that?
Well, they have T-shirts.
They use it when he's like taking a shot. Like he gets behind the arc, he's spotting up, he catches it, "Pritch, please," and then he shoots it. Like, how does it work?
I think it's just like a T-shirt that everyone wears.
Oh, got it.
But when
they don't actually chant it.
No, they don't chant it.
Or every time he makes one, "Pritch, please." that would be dope.
They don't chant anything in Boston because I will admit, and I'll come clean a little bit later on, I have some regrets. By the way, I handled myself last night in Boston. I got way too comfortable in that city. I got way too comfortable sitting next to Celtic fans. And I'll address that later. But one of the things I tried to do that I'm embarrassed by is I stood up and started chanting "flopper" at Jalen Brunson. And I expected that the Celtic fan would join in, and they all looked at me like I had 5 heads.
What are you talking about? We're not familiar with this.
They're like, "We're not Detroit, you loser. We're not joining in with you." But speaking of Jalen Brunson, when you look at this effort, and you look at this performance, and you mentioned the way they came out in the third quarter, I mentioned the chance to stomp on them mid-second quarter. There are a myriad of reasons why they lost this game. There's a myriad of reasons why they let go of the rope. And I promise you, especially over the first hour of this show, every single blame man will be mentioned. But Jalen Brunson is the engine. Jalen Brunson is the star. And while I've gotten on Knicks fans who ever criticized Jalen Brunson, I'd like to criticize Jalen Brunson just a tad bit. In the third quarter, he became completely ball dominant. He dribbled way too much.
Yeah.
He was looking for himself and maybe just Josh Hart. It's almost like Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, after the ball incident, if you will. Remember the ball incident?
Yes.
Hey, you can't do that. That was the line last night from, what's his name? Holler and Harlem.
You can't grab there. You can't grab there.
What are you doing, Jaylen Brown?
It's almost like Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson said, "We are, as a tag team, going to destroy you now." And you can't play that way. The Knicks are at their best when the basketball is shared. So I think when you look at what happened and you look at the failed opportunity, look, heavy lies the crown. Here's the reality about Jalen Brunson. Heavy lies the crown. And when you are the king of New York, which he clearly is, it's going to fall at your feet when you have a 3-1 series lead and you have a chance to eat your food and finish them off and you come up small. And he was a part of it. Now, everybody was a part of it. And like I mentioned, we'll list off the names. We'll go through it. But I think it starts with the star. And in the third quarter of this game, when they came out with a complete lack of energy, basically Josh Hart hit a 3 to put him up by 3. It was all hell after that.
Right.
Like, give Josh credit that he had confidence in his shot, even though the Celtics were daring him to shoot all night. But after that, it was like, it was selfish. Ball isn't moving. Brunson gets called for the fouls. Cat's an idiot with some of the fouls he takes. And it became not just bad basketball and not just uninspired basketball. It became dumb basketball. And that's what led to their demise.
And that's ultimately when you start really digging in. This is where it goes back to Tibbs. This is where Tom Thibodeau, their head coach, has to take some of the blame. Because in those moments, when you see it, and it was visibly apparent that whether their mindset was wrong or I don't know, they just were confused on what to do. Clearly, defensively, they were confused. There's too many, especially in the second half, open opportunities, missed switches, double teams, now triple teams in some of these some cases, leaving 2 guys wide ass open, and they were knocking down their shots. So much of this also has to go to the head coach. We talk about it all the time. When you come out with high energy and high IQ, the coach gets a lot of credit. Or you take on the personality or the energy of your head coach. the same thing has to be said when it goes the other way. And Tibbs actually deserves a lot of the blame. One, for not correcting, and two, for not stopping them and sitting them down for
100%.
2 minutes. Sit down for 2 minutes. I got to talk to you right now. Deuce, Mitch, whoever, go take your time here. I need to figure this out before it gets out of hand. And unfortunately, he delayed and waited, and it got out of hand.
100%. I agree with you. Now, when this game ends, I want to hear from the Knicks because I'm curious. I'm very curious what was going to be said after a loss like this. And again, Tiki Chair, you have answered questions after losses. Mm-hmm. You have been very direct with answers after losses.
You have to.
Jalen Brunson is asked, first question as he sits down, what went wrong? A very, very simple, straight question. Hey, Jalen Brunson, what went wrong? Listen to his answer and non-answer, and then maybe you could help us figure out what Jalen Brunson really meant.
A lot. A lot. Just, I'm not even going to explain it. Just a lot.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
I'm not even going to explain it. A lot.
What is he referring to? Because a part of this is on him. Now, this doesn't mean he isn't the king anymore, so calm down over there, Sean. He still is. He's going to face his heat for Game 5. But when he says that, what does he mean?
I almost feel like he's trying not to throw myriads of people under the bus, including his teammates, possibly the referees, and even his coach. That's what it sounds like. I think he sounds like he has a lot to say about how everything went down in the second half, and he just doesn't want to say it. So it's just, I almost credit him for being so obtuse and obscure, because once I think if he honestly answered that question, it would be scorched earth on everybody.
Yeah, I think you may be right. You may be right. Because I heard him say that, and my initial reaction is what you said, which is it's probably best for him to bite his tongue. But what is he referring to? And I started thinking. I was in a hotel room in Boston. I'd done a RICO. I'm now giving this a lot of thought, investigating. And all I could think about was bad Tiki. Because last week, Bad Tiki was on. And by the way, Bad Tiki will join us in a little over 2 hours. And I have no idea what he's going to talk about. But last week on Bad Tiki, of course, it was an AI. It's all fun. He had Big Balls Brunson on. Remember this?
I do remember.
And Big Balls Brunson, besides taking shots at Tommy, took shots at Karl-Anthony Towns. And all I could think about is what I thought, what Tommy thought, what I heard BT say earlier today as a Knicks fan, what he thought. And it's what everyone thought. Karl-Anthony Towns played idiotically yesterday. He played dumbly. And it's like all of us want to preface it by saying he's a good dude and he seems so sweet. And all that's true.
Right. And it's not something that's persistent throughout the year or even this postseason. But last night, it was bad.
It was bad. Look, when you have your shot blocked, which, yes, it's embarrassing. It sucks. You're 7 foot. No one wants to have your shot blocked. And your reaction is to basically go out and put a chokehold on Peyton Pritchard. Like, what are you doing? I understand you're frustrated. You can't commit that foul.
Right.
And he self-sabotaged with his, I hate to say dumbness, but dumbness on the basketball floor. And we all thought it. So if I thought it as an IBO, if BT thought it as a Knicks fan, Tommy, I can't. You were mumbling so much during this game. I think you said that, though, right? You were pissed at Cat.
I was mumbling, and I was working that gum like I was chewing it like I was a horse. So I was working it. Cat's been horrible in the series. There's no other way to phrase it. I mean, he's just been bad.
And that's why. That's what I think Jalen meant. When he didn't want to get into it. Because if we're all sitting here.
The body language is awful.
100%. We're all sitting here thinking the same thing. We all watch the same game from different perspectives. We're in the building. You're at home. Tommy's a Knicks fan. I'm not. We all walked away saying, what is this guy freaking doing?
Right. Now, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, but it perceptually, it made a huge difference.
You know what? Let me answer the would it make a difference thing. Because I remember we talked about this in Game 3 when the Celtics blew them out.
Yeah.
Little things add up. Little things make a difference. So, yes, I've heard some Knicks fans complain about the officiating. Fair game. There's plenty of calls we could look back on, especially the 5 on Jalen in the third quarter. If you take that and you take Cat's dumbness and you take the way Jalen played in the third quarter and you take the lack of a killer instinct and you take Tom Thibodeau's decisions, if you add it all up together, it's like voting. We all say, well, my vote doesn't count. Yeah, one person may not, but it adds up. So, yeah, you're right. With Cat not committing a dumb third foul, have changed the game entirely from losing by 25. No one's suggesting that, but the little things add up, and those things turned into what was effectively a blowout last night.
Right.
And so when I hear Jalen Brunson say, I'm not going to get into it, I think what he's talking about is Cat. I do.
Yeah.
He's not going to say it. Maybe the big ball Brunson will with bad Tiki. I don't know. But that's what I think he meant, because I think that's what every Knicks fan thought as they were watching this game.
But to be honest, it's smart for him not to say it.
You're
because
right.
Because the series isn't over. They have to play Game 6 back home tomorrow night, and he needs this team to be cohesive. They can't get into, me versus him, or him versus the team, or this guy is the fault that we didn't close it. Like, you can't get to any of that. Now, maybe privately you have maybe a heated, open, and honest and call each other out conversation. None of that can become public, because once it does, then it becomes the narrative, and it's all you'll talk about. That's all that you'll hear. Not just from your coaches, from your fans, from your friends, from your family, from everybody. As soon as that becomes public, it gets bad, and it never goes away.
We'll get to your calls next, 888-808-1019. We got a lot to get to. Tommy and I were in the building. We experienced the Boston atmosphere. We got a lot to say about that, including some of the most random sports jerseys we ran into. But when we come back, not only your calls, Tiki was getting to it, where Tom Thibodeau falls in the mistakes of last night.